It's now 7 p.m. And if you would all join me, please, in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we have a roll call, please, Rudy?
Commissioner Schroeder.
Present.
Vice Chair Heck.
Present.
Commissioner McGraw.
Here.
Commissioner Kreidler.
Here.
Commissioner Frank.
Present.
Chairwoman Nesser.
Present.
Commissioner Howard.
Here.
7 present. We have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. The consideration and approval of the agenda and consideration of approval of the regular meeting minutes of July 24th, 2018. Before I call for a motion, does anyone wish to make any changes to the agenda or make any changes or corrections to the minutes of July 24th?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I once again wanted to reiterate I am not pleased with the lack of the lack of detail. Let's just put it that way.
Okay, do you wish any changes to be made?
Other than having proper detail in there, no.
Okay, I'll move on then and ask if there's a motion for the agenda and the minutes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept the agenda as presented and approve the minutes from the July 24th, 2018 regular meeting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please, Rudy?
Vice Chair Heck.
Yes.
Commissioner McGraw.
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler.
No.
Commissioner Frank.
Yes.
Chairwoman Nesser.
Yes.
Commissioner Howard.
Yes.
Commissioner Schroeder.
Yes.
6 in favor, 1 against. The motion passes, Madam Chair.
Okay, we'll move on to the public hearings. And it appears there is no public hearing, so old business is next. And it appears that there is no old business, correct? So we'll move on to new business. We have 2 items tonight. Presentation and discussion of cases GPA-1-18 and PZ-2-18 by Amerco Real Estate Company and U-Haul International, represented by David Pollock. And Rudy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Right off the bat, I want to apologize. We do not have PowerPoint presentations tonight. We had a system malfunction earlier, and by the time we got it fixed, it was about after 6 o'clock. But I do have some exhibits, Madam Chair. Basically, the first case is a general plan proposal, general plan amendment. It's really a land use map amendment. We haven't seen a general plan amendment in many years. As a matter of fact, I don't think we've had a single one since we adopted our 2010 general plan. And of course, as we all know, the economy slowed down, and it's just barely starting to recover. So this is the first one in quite a while. Basically, the property is located at the southeast corner of US60 Superstition Freeway in Idaho. It's plus or minus 80 acres. You may recall back in the 2000s, there was a rezoning for the entire 80 acres. A developer called Diversified Partners had proposed a rezoning and a development plan for what was going to be basically our own little regional power center, 300,000 or 600,000 square feet of commercial and retail space, and restaurant pads and pads for other businesses. And then the economy went bad and the project never happened. Long story short, around 2011, 2012, the previous owners sold the 80 acres to U-Haul. And we've been talking to the U-Haul folks ever since about different ideas for the property. And we finally have a general plan amendment request. And basically, Larry, if we can go to the next slide, what U-Haul is asking for, it's a twofold request. They're processing the general plan amendment and a concurrent rezoning. And what U-Haul would like to do is take about 50 acres of the 78-acre property and redesignate it What we mean by that is right now the general plan has the property designated as a community commercial opportunity area. In the community commercial opportunity area, you normally put commercial zoning districts like C1, C2, and C3. You don't normally put business parks or industrial in a community commercial area. So they're changing the land use designation for 50 acres of the property. The area that you see in gray is proposed to be redesignated from community commercial to light industrial business park. The red that you see on the screen would remain community commercial. Along with the general plan amendment request, U-Haul is also proposing to rezone the 50 acres that are being redesignated, rezone from B1 PD, general commercial by plan development, to B5 PD, which is normally industrial by plan development. However, as I will reveal in a little bit, we're trying to keep it more of a light industry business park type of development and exclude some of the more obnoxious uses that might not go good next to a 30-acre, 28-acre shopping center should it develop there. And then also the business park to the east is more of a light industrial, not so much heavy industrial type of development. Next slide, please. And if we can scroll up a little bit, and this is the conceptual development plan for the property. Up in the northwest corner of the property, at the very southeast corner of US60 and Idaho, is U-Haul's proposed development site. They're taking about 10 acres of the property for their, it's going to be a rental center, it's going to be mini storage, equipment rentals, that kind of stuff, the things you normally see at U-Haul facilities, but also they want to have about 200 spaces for RV, boat, and vehicle storage. So they propose to take up about 10 acres at that northwest corner. Directly south of the northwest corner, they are still showing us a possible conceptual development plan for a future shopping center. Once again, the original shopping center took up all 80 acres, and you do have a graphic, by the way, a couple of graphics in your staff report that remind you of what the old shopping center that was proposed, and that's this graphic here. I'm sorry for the audience, but you know, fortunately we can't show everything we're showing the commission. And this graphic here was for the old shopping center. So basically a reworked plan for a smaller retail, a commercial center on plus or minus 28 acres. And then basically the east 40 of the acre property is conceptually planned for a future light industrial subdivision. Okay, once again, the east boundary of the property is Winchester. On the other side of Winchester, we have Baseline Industrial Park. Right now, Winchester exists as half of a roadway. In other words, the developers of Baseline Industrial improved their half of the right-of-way. Baseline is a paved road, but it does not have full street improvements. Idaho is also a paved road, but it also lacks complete street improvements. And by complete street improvements, we normally mean the pavement widening, sidewalk curbing, gutters, street lights, hydrants, driveway entrances, drainage features, those kinds of things. So minimally improved roads on 3 sides, and of course the freeway to the north. To the west of the property, we have undeveloped state land. To the south of the property, we also have undeveloped state land, and then the city's public works yard is also on the south side of Baseline. So, Madam Chair, tonight's items are not voting items because these are general plan amendments under state law. And to get as much public input and answer as many of your questions as we can, we have set up a schedule. And in your packets, I think we included that schedule. Tonight is a work session discussion only. Next Monday, we're also taking these items to the City Council for a work session discussion. And once again, under state law, we have to have 2 meetings of the Planning and Zoning Commission. For a city our size, we have to have 2 meetings of the Planning and Zoning Commission in 2 different places. So your public hearing on August 28th is going to be across the street at the Fire District Administration Boardroom. Okay, so the meeting on August 28th is at the county complex in the Fire District Boardroom. Your public hearing on September 11th is going to be here in City Council chambers. We may or may not have another work session with the general plan on Monday, September 17th, but we propose to take these general plan cases and the rezoning case to the City Council for their public hearing and decision on September 18th. So P&Z, August 28th, September 11th, City Council, September 18th. Madam Chair, we have a lot of information in the staff reports, the applicant's narrative, the application forms, like I said, the old ordinance which approved the existing plan development zoning on the property, including special conditions that were applicable to it, such as dedication of surrounding streets, and there was some talk in there about sharing costs for a street light. We don't necessarily know that all of the same conditions are going to be requested of this applicant. As a matter of fact, we're having a meeting on Thursday where we hope to nail some of this stuff down as far as the types of improvements and the types of zoning conditions that we might recommend to you on August 28th. But tonight, once again, Madam Chair, is for the purpose of introducing the project, and you've got the applicant's narrative, their justification for the general plan amendment request. Our good friends in economic development have also been quite involved with this process. And Alon Valander is here tonight. He would also like to speak to you for a couple of minutes about how this all has evolved. And I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time, or if you want to hear from Alon first, that's fine too.
Well, why don't we get as much information as possible?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, but
Yeah.
Elon may
So do
actually
I,
answer
yeah.
them, so.
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, Alon Valander, Senior Economic Development Specialist for the city. Just wanted to share a little bit of background in regards to the process since this owner has taken ownership of the land. It's been several years. Over that period of time, economic development has had opportunity through our regional partners to respond to incoming requests for land information or building information for potential projects that are coming into the state of Arizona. However, we've struggled to be able to respond to many of those simply because we are underzoned for industrial at this point in time. The largest industrial piece of land that we have, contiguous acreage, is about 3 acres in size, and the largest available building that we have in the city is about 10,000 square feet. So as this applicant has brought forth a project to the city, we had discussions with them in regards to the project that they're interested in and the city's desire to expand our employment corridors. And this gave us the opportunity to look at an option to expand our employment corridor through a rezoning and a general plan amendment of these 40 acres towards an industrial/business park type of use. This action specifically is very beneficial to the city in allowing us to be more nimble to responding to new projects, new businesses coming into the city, in the sense that a general plan amendment only occurs once a year, as you all are well aware. If a project were to come to us today, that project, assuming this was not going on at this point in time, that project couldn't look at even rezoning this land until September of next year, because they would have already passed opportunities for applications. So what this allows us to do through rezoning and general plan amendments, it allows us to be responsive. And if there is a project that comes in, assuming this gets passed and adopted by council, and assuming all of that happens, if we had a project come in October or November, they have the opportunity to come directly into the development aspect of it, rather than waiting for entitlements and rezoning and amendments and so on and so forth. So this really gives the city opportunity from an economic development standpoint to expand opportunity to be responsive to businesses that will bring jobs into our community. So.
Now, I have a question for you then,
Yes.
based on what you're telling us. Let me see how to word this. The city operates on sales tax. So I think it's important that we look at our land and how it's going to bring sales tax into the city. Now, optimally, if this had become a power center years ago, the whole 78 acres, that would be the best thing that could happen. But we can sit here and wait for it, and it might be another 10 or so years that it's just going to sit there vacant, so that's not good either. So is the need for light industrial, as you're saying, we don't have enough of it, And I know business people I've talked to who said, we don't have enough buildings here for me to move my industry. I know someone personally who had to leave AJ because they did not have, there was no place here big enough for what they needed. And they went to Mesa. So it's a good thing. Is this doing a light industrial on this section, is that going to bring in adequate sales tax to the city?
So, Madam Chair, I can conjecture as to what potentially could go in, may go in. There aren't users identified to come in and fill this site right now. So any conjecture as to how much sales tax would be produced would be a shot in the dark. However, there are two elements that we talk about from an economic development standpoint. The city absolutely is dependent on sales tax for services that the city provides, from roadways to police to all of the other aspects like library and parks and rec. So absolutely, sales tax is an important function of this. Could there be sales tax producing entities that go into this park? The answer to that is yes, there could be. There could be anything from a fulfillment center to businesses such as plumbing supply stores or electrical supply stores that would produce sales taxes for the city. Again, do we have any specific businesses that are identified to go into this? At this point in time, the answer to that is no. The other side of the equation is the city is absolutely dependent on sales tax. Our residents are absolutely dependent on jobs for quality of life. And what we have is, if we have an economy completely dependent upon sales tax, those are typically retail type of jobs, and they're not high-paying jobs. And so it becomes difficult for our residents to subsist a good quality standard of living if that's their only job options within the city. And therefore, they would travel out of the city to get a job. We would love to be able to provide the opportunity for our residents to select to work, live, and play in our city. And this creates the opportunity to at least be responsive to more companies that are looking to be here. So that's an important piece for us as well. More jobs potentially brings in more residential. They go hand in hand, and what goes hand in hand with residential is retail as well. So we see this as a winning option, a winning opportunity for the city to have more acreage that would allow for expansion of a jobs corridor. In addition, economic development has operated on what we've called for several years the 3DED, three dimensions of economic development in the city. Tourism being one of them, or destination, which is tourism being one. Downtown, building a thriving downtown, and diversifying our economy. And so this fulfills an opportunity to move towards that diversification of our economy.
Okay. I have one other question. It's either for you or possibly Rudy.
Okay.
This upside down L shape that they want to, the 50 acres that they want to redesignate or rezone, they want to put this industrial area right on 60. So people traveling on 60 are seeing nothing here, nothing that is business, shops or anything like that. People traveling on 60 are going to see an industrial area, which isn't necessarily something that's going to entice them to get off at the exit to go shopping there. Would that not be better to have this property with this, move the shops up, you know what I'm saying, and turn the L down at the bottom?
So
Yeah, I can't
sure
show you on
I'd like to respond as well. I think the answer to that is it's a logical thought process that you're going through there in regards to that retail center. We also take into consideration that the owner of this site, one of their arms is U-Haul, and they're as interested in the placement of the location of their business as would any other businesses be down there. So when you get into the discussion of what should go there and how that works out, of course there's two sides to the equation, and from it's a public policy discussion, I suppose, that would go hand in hand with this. But I'll step off and let Rudy share whatever he'd like to.
Well, that's obviously a very astute observation, Madam Chair. U-Haul wants the prime site for themselves. I understand that. They own the property. The retail is going to be several hundred feet south of the freeway. I guess that's probably a question that can better be answered by the applicant, exactly why this particular configuration, although I think we can all guess at the answer. More generally speaking, hopefully you noticed that on the plan for the previous shopping center, there was about 600,000 square feet of retail space allocated. It was all conceptual, of course, and this current plan still shows us about 300,000 square feet of retail commercial opportunity area, and the other 300,000 square feet would be spread out over the various industrial. There is, I believe, a small retail component to the U-Haul facility, but mostly it's storage and RV storage and stuff like that, which I don't think we get a whole lot of tax money from. Larry, I have two other little exhibits. The next one is just the rezoning map exhibit, which shows that, once again, the part of the property that's crosshatched is being zoned B1 PD industrial, and the remaining 28 acres is still going to be, B5 PD industrial, and the remaining 28 acres is going to remain B1 PD general commercial. And then to try and produce more clean industry, job-generating types of businesses, we have one more exhibit. We, in early discussions or in recent discussions with the applicants who are at U-Haul, we have come up with this preliminary list of proposed exclusions. For the B1 property, of course, we want to maximize the retail and keep out the storage lots and the more stuff that's non-conducive to a retail or shopping center. And on the B5 part of the property, once again, we have recommended excluding the more obnoxious uses. And I think U-Haul and staff is pretty much, I might be wrong, but I think we're pretty much in agreement with the proposed exclusions list, except for one thing, of course, which is the RV storage. For a long time, staff and I think at higher levels of city government, we have tried to discourage RV storage lots, take up a lot of land, they don't employ anybody, we don't get any sales tax. So we were honest with U-Haul and we told them, we'll probably be recommending against the RV storage component, and I think that's really the only main thing that we disagreed on. Once again, this would be part of the zoning, but the request is twofold: a general plan amendment and a rezoning proposal. If the general plan amendment fails, the rezoning cannot be approved. So there's also an at-risk element to these two cases. And with that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Madam Chair?
Peter?
Rudy, I guess I'm going to ask a question, and I don't mean for it to sound caustic. Is this kind of a, you give us this, we'll give you that kind of thing? The reason why I'm asking that is that we have a lot of storage facilities, U-Haul rental facility, operations going on in the city. Now we're going to add another one. You yourself said it's probably not an extraordinarily high, revenue generating operation.
Right.
So again, I realize that U-Haul owns all of this, and so I'm trying to understand, is this one of those, you give us this and we'll give you the rest of the industrial area for industrial
Well,
development?
maybe one way to explain it is when we first started having conversations with the folks from Amerco and U-Haul back in 2012, they were talking an 80-acre facility. So we've gone from about 80 acres to about 10 acres. I suppose that's one give and take component. But there's, we're still early in the process,
Yeah.
and you're going to have at least 2 public hearings, and this gives you an opportunity to really think about this, what you want, and what you want to ask from Amerco and U-Haul.
Yeah. I can see that I can see them having a very, very large U-Haul sign out there, and so my concern also would be our current businesses, that they may be affected. So we may rob Peter to pay Paul, if you will, in order to make this happen. And
Well, one of the questions we asked was, okay, if we approve a large U-Haul facility, does that mean all of the little U-Haul outlets in town would go away? And I think the answer to that is no. Those are all independent I don't know if it's franchisee is the correct word, but, you know, basically any commercial business can also offer to have U-Haul rentals on there, and they're kind of all over the place. But you know, maybe some of those go away, maybe they don't. If you've got a major facility at a major intersection, you know, more people might go there and not so much to the other little places around town, but until it happens, we really won't know.
Rudy, help me understand. They want to rezone 50 acres and only use 10?
Yes.
Why?
Well, once again, like Yolande said, this has been a negotiated process going on for a few years, and I think ultimately U-Haul is in agreement with the city that this might be part of a more better function as a mixed-use type of development, although basically we're talking commercial and industrial, not residential, although that was one of the things we had discussed also early on. Maybe part of the property could go multifamily or something like that. You know, why they ultimately were okay with 10 acres, or maybe not okay, I don't know. That's probably a better question, once again, for Mr. Pollock.
Building on that, I have the question, they only want this little top corner, and the rest of this, they want to lease out to other people to build?
Well,
not gonna are they gonna build
that's another
the-
interesting question, because the way I'm seeing this development, and we're not sure if those are internal streets are going to be private streets or public streets. I think this is eventually going to be a commercial and industrial subdivision. And if it's a subdivision, then of course individual properties can be sold off. But that's, you know, a discussion that we have yet to have down the road. Right
So they
now,
don't plan on building any of these light industrial
not to
buildings?
my knowledge, Madam Chair. I think they are mainly focused on their facility.
Okay.
What would?
Madam Chair, if I could just,
Yeah.
that's me over here, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say,
Sorry.
I think what Elon has said, I think is accurate, is that they've got inquiries through the Arizona Commerce Authority, et cetera, or through other regional entities, and one thing that we can't show, that at least now there would be zoning there to pitch viable projects of a company relocating. Early on, there was a different site plan that showed the U-Haul on the east side, so it was basically flip-flopping those two. And again, I think from their perspective, this is the hard corner, it's the 100% corner, that's, as they call it, location, location, location. How someone might have to come down Idaho, baseline, up Winchester to get to the site if they were to develop. I think it was about 12 acres then. So I think part of the answer too might be that, you know, you put up U-Haul's a brand name nationwide, that might signify that other sites are available. So you do have a site go in there, and that could spawn or you know, have other development, trigger other development. So I think that's part of the hope, is that U-Haul goes in there, people see it as, it's kind of like Fry's. Okay, so Fry's comes in, next thing you know, we see Discount Tire and Big O and these other things. So U-Haul goes in there, and we might see some other activity, so that's part of it. So the other aspect of it was that whole commercial Idaho was going to be, stay as the B1 PD. And then in terms of, I think, working with staff, is that what we're trying to get at is if there is going to be RV storage, from our perspective, it would be better in a B5 than in a B1. So if we're going to finish rewriting the code one of these days, that any mini warehouses, any RVs storage would be in a B5. So I think U-Haul listened to us, and they came back and said, okay, we like this site better, so how about if we make that B5? It's kind of meeting in the middle, but I still, like today, we spent an hour with someone who wants to put RV storage along Apache Trail. So we're trying to be consistent, and so I think that's what Rudy's saying today, is that we're trying to be consistent with folks in terms of what we think overall for the city, not for individual developers. So again, I think this is what works for U-Haul, and I think they want to be here because that is the prime corner, as Rudy indicated. But I think they did work with us in terms of making that B5, so that if we are going to make a move, at least they would be consistent with the way the direction is for any future type of land use would be in a B5 type zoning.
And Madam Chair, members of the commission, if you had a chance to read through U-Haul's rezoning narrative, there was a part of that narrative includes U-Haul's recommended conditions of approval and a possible additional point of compromise. U-Haul is suggesting that if we allow RV storage, the RV storage would be on their parcel only, not on any of the other parcels. So that's.
Okay. Did you have something else? Yeah.
So I wanted to add in a little bit of background in regards to how we got to this point. U-Haul did come in, and their initial proposal for the project was just in relation to their U-Haul site. As an applicant and as a developer, they've been they've worked with us to understand what our vision is and what we would like to see there. So all in all, the initial discussion was potentially just for 30 acres industrial, and they felt that after looking at the trends, we had a meeting with Greater Phoenix Economic Council, who does a good amount of the recruiting for businesses outside of Arizona to come in. Trends right now in industrial, the past 2 years have exceeded. The absorption of existing industrial space has been higher than it has been at any time in the last 10 years. New spec builds has been higher than any other time in the last 10 years because it's being absorbed at a high rate. Trends obviously can change. As you can see when we looked at this as a power center, it changed pretty quickly. However, these trends are expected to continue for a period of time. And so this is a great opportunity not only for the city, but through looking at those trends and having those discussions, U-Haul also saw opportunity to have good development here. So this is not U-Haul coming in saying, it's our way or the highway, we're going to give you this so that we can get that. It's been a long discussion with the city as to what we would like to see. And we went through a lot of iterations, and we came together and looked at what would work best and what would best benefit, hopefully, both parties. Because at the end of the day, we can't promise that we're going to have industrial come in and fill this, and they can't promise that they're going to have all of these buildings built. The economy is going to drive that, but the trends in the economy show good opportunity to have that happen. So,
Elon, but we will have an RV storage.
the U-Haul, assuming again that the rezoning goes through.
Not very industrial.
Excuse me?
Not very industrial.
I'm not sure what's in your mind
Well,
when
you're
you
talking
say
about
that.
industrial designations and the economic impact of those types of designations, and yet we're talking about an RV storage.
Correct. And if you were to ask me, siloed, about RV storage, my response to you would not be unlike Rudy or Larry has shared. It's not a high jobs producing, it's not a high sales tax producing use. But holistically, when we look at this, I am not looking at this from an economic development prospect as this is a project that's going to bring a building in, a development in today. What this does, having this rezoning and this general plan amendment, it allows this site to be shovel ready. If a site is not shovel ready, it doesn't matter if we submit it. It gets set aside. We are excluded from the list almost immediately. When you have a company that's coming in to do light manufacturing or those types, they're not looking for something that they can do 2-3 years down the road. They're looking for something that they can start working on in the nearest future, because time is money, and if they have to go through long processes just to entitle the land, it's not something that they're typically going to want to go after. So this again removes those obstacles in relation to these 40 acres as being a potential future site for a project should it present itself. But that being said, the applicant and the city have been having discussions. They're looking at utility capacities. We're having, Rudy referenced a meeting, we're having a meeting to talk about utility capacities, to talk about what site improvements need to happen so that when this goes forward, if council approves it, they can hit the ground running and their marketing team can get going on it, and our city team can start utilizing this as a site opportunity.
Elon, so then you're saying that the goal will be to make light industrial parcels to make them shovel-ready?
They're very close to being shovel-ready in regards to there is roadways that are there for access. There is infrastructure in place, sewer, water. Communications are all there or very nearby. But there will be aspects and elements that aren't quite to full capacity that may need improvements. But yes, at the end of the day, this is a goal, is to get this site as close to shovel-ready as possible, so that it is a viable business and employment sector.
Madam Chair.
Yes, really?
Elon, does U-Haul have a similar project already in development or already developed here in Arizona?
I can't speak to all of the projects that they have. What I can tell you is that they have brought in examples of different developments that they've done outside of just U-Haul. They have in other places, whether they were purchased and they're running them or they developed them, I don't know, but they do have within their portfolio some industrial and some commercial retail. So they do have those in their portfolio. I don't know that they developed them, and I don't know how they came about.
Can we find that information out?
I would imagine that the applicant could share some of that information, and you might be able to search it on your own. I'm not.
Well,
I can work with the applicant to get that answer for you.
they're looking for us to make a decision,
Mm-hmm.
and we're asking for as much information as possible
Absolutely.
from them to make that decision. So that's on their shoulders to provide that info.
Absolutely, and
Okay.
and they are working in those aspects. They've been a fairly open book with us in regards to what they're. I just, from an economic development standpoint, what I want to get across here is we are not looking at these as buildings on the ground right now. What we are doing is prep for the future. You know, if we want to bring in a good development, what do we do as city? We work on the things that are within our control: roadways, infrastructure, those types of elements. Right now, the lacking piece that we have in terms of employment corridor is industrial, properly zoned and entitled land to be responsive to projects. That is the very positive that comes out of this. Commission is correct. The only project, the only buildings that are part of this that are likely to come out of the ground in the very, very near future would be the U-Haul site. But the opportunity that the other creates is significant impact for the city.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So, I hear you right when you said the whole parcel is about shovel-ready. It's got all the amenities you would need. But are you saying it would come full circle, providing this U-Haul facility becomes reality?
I'm going to kind of state back what I'm hearing you saying.
Well, what I'm saying is that you're saying, okay, we've got the power there, we got the water there, there are roadways going there. It's for all intents and purposes, ready to go.
Except for entitlements.
And U-Haul will provide those entitlements.
That's this process. Yeah, so this process essentially, if you're looking at a time frame, it removes anywhere from 9 to 18 months from a project that would want to come in. If they were to want to come in, it removes 9 or 18 months from them just being to entitlements. So it is a removal of a barrier, of obstacle of time.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Elon, that's just the 40 of the 50. This other 20-some acres wouldn't be part of that scope.
So
As far as the partially developed property.
again, the only developed building that has been spoken about specifically at this point in time would be the U-Haul site. The rest of the commercial and the industrial is what they have there is conceptual. There are no plans to build buildings at this point in time that have been submitted or even discussed in terms of actual out of the ground. This is very conceptual.
Right, I understand that. It's the partially developed. The term you use is shovel-ready. That's 40 acres of that 50, correct?
It is bringing, so when we talk about utilities, we're talking typically curbside to some degree, so that they're not having to bring water a quarter mile down the road, right? I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but let me finish real quick. So if you're asking, are they going to do all this street curb and sidewalk around the whole thing? Those details haven't been hammered out yet. That would be, and I'm going to turn to Rudy, but that would be handled when plans are submitted for development. Not unlike if somebody were to buy a vacant piece of land at this point in time, we don't necessarily go in and say, okay, you've bought this land, now you got to put in curb, sidewalk, and gutter. It's usually driven by development that's coming out of the ground. Those discussions, though, we're going to start having those discussions on Thursday. So in the future, we can, as staff, better inform you as to what requirements are beginning to look like.
But it's not going to include this retail section at all.
So Amerco, I don't think the intent in the discussions that we've had is not that we're going to ignore this piece. The economy isn't driving commercial retail like this right now, and our economy isn't driving commercial retail right now. That does not mean that they will, or I want to qualify this right. I don't know what their actions are going to look like, but they're not saying that they are not going to look at marketing this piece. The main thing that we have been in discussions in is this industrial sector, and we have talked about what is it going to look like. What are your plans to move forward with marketing? And they're in the process of getting all of that. So do their near-term plans include marketing this commercial piece? That'll have to be a question for the applicant. Or again, I can go back, we'll have that conversation, and I can bring that information back for a future meeting. But they have not said, we're not doing anything with this. It's just whether or not the market will drive a development of that kind yet. It's questionable in our area.
Elon?
Yeah.
I think what I'm hearing, and Mike, tell me if this isn't maybe what you're thinking, they're asking us to change the zoning on this change the purpose of it, but yet not giving us all the information, what they want to do with it, and how do we know whether to even change the zoning till we know what they want to do with it?
So I think the answer to you is that they are giving you the information of what they would like to do, right? So there's conceptual drawings there. They've given you some conceptuals of what buildings might look like. I'll give you one very brief. GPEC sends out what we call PIFs on a fairly regular basis. There could be a PIF that comes in that is saying, hey, we've got a food processing company that needs a 150,000 square foot building and is potentially going to bring in 500 plus jobs. At this point in time, this is conceptual. If that company says, hey, we would like to be an AJ, that's a conversation that now can be had between them and Amerco, the developer. Whether it's a sale or a lease, or those things haven't been determined yet, and they would be determined during those negotiations. It's not a spec build. This is not a spec build, so it will be handled, and the economy will drive this. Again, the benefit of this is not buildings out of ground today. The benefit is, can we be responsive when opportunities come our direction? And the same could be said in regards to the commercial retail. It is properly zoned, it's properly entitled, so we can be responsive. If a project comes in and says, hey, we would like to do a commercial strip retail center, we have this right off the freeway. There may be certain processes that they have to go to depending on the project, but we are very close to being prepared to accept a project through that zoning and through these general plan amendments.
Madam Chair. Elon, you had made mention that Amerco would be marketing the light industrial and possibly the commercial. Would the city's opportunity for input, was it just simply creating that list of exclusions, or is there, are we kind of at the mercy of?
This is what our relationship has looked like to this point in time. U-Haul came in and said, we would like to do a U-Haul center there. The city said, we're not real thrilled about just the idea of just a U-Haul here. We want to see some opportunities for greater economic impacts. So U-Haul then responded in this way. What would you like to see? That created a conversation stream where we talked about uses. We talked about what we as a city did not want to see. In all reality, I was very clear with them. I don't want to see a bunch of storage yards. That's not what we're looking for. We are looking for jobs-producing corridor. So what does that mean to me as an economic developer? It could be, like I mentioned earlier, construction-based vendors because they're high sales tax producers. It could be a fulfillment warehouse where we're gaining sales tax dollars through items that are sold and sent out from here. It could be any number of industrial opportunities. It could look very different. You could drive down US60 over near Mesa. There's an industrial development that is about this size there. Could look like that. It could look like something very different. The economy is going to drive that, the specifics of that. Does that answer your question?
Good. Thank you.
I'm sure.
Willie?
Elon, just have a question, basic question, and I know you don't have specifics. How many businesses have come and inquired over the last year about our light industry availability?
I don't have a specific number.
Give us a round number.
I'm going to turn my head and cock my head back towards Janine at the moment, but GPEC is probably, PIFs that have come in through GPEC and ACA, we've probably seen in the last year, if we're going a calendar year from this point back, we've probably seen upwards of 25 to 30. I mean, we're talking large companies that are coming in and looking for space. Could we have responded to all of those? Probably not, because there's going to be elements, you know, some will say we want building in place, some will say we're willing to do build to suit. So we wouldn't necessarily have been able to respond to all of those. In addition to that, we've had other companies that have come through looking for different types of industrial space where we really have nowhere to point them to. We can say, hey, go behind Safeway, but they don't really fit because there's residential community right next to that. We can say go up 17th Avenue, but that doesn't fit because the lots are all an acre or less, and it's mostly storage in there, and you know, you don't want big semis driving up through Tomahawk to get to 17th Avenue. We can point them to Winchester Industrial, which is what's right across the street here, but there's only 3 acres available space to develop in. What we have had land recently, with the minimal space that we've had 2 groups that are in different stages of development. One that submitted plans in a distribution type of center that's in Winchester that's sitting on a couple acres, and then we have another manufacturing that went through a rezoning in the recent past for about 90,000 square feet that would bring about 50 jobs. So you look at those 2 types of projects that have come in. The manufacturing wouldn't have had to go through a rezoning. They probably would have been able to come directly into this space. The distribution center, probably the same idea. So again, it gives us the opportunity to be more responsive instead of trying to find a piece of land that might be suited because everything around it, it's not going to disrupt too much. But even the manufacturing center, it backs right up to residential. So there's always the concern, do these uses complement each other? These 40 acres back up to more industrial.
Elon, then, you just said that there's been in the last year about 25 businesses who've come to the city looking for light industrial.
Finish and then I'll respond. I apologize.
Okay. And there's nothing here that they can move into. Why haven't they asked for anything to be rezoned? Why haven't they gone through this process?
So again, the 25 or more that I'm talking about is GPEC leads. They've come in through Greater Phoenix Economic Council. They don't go directly to cities. They typically deal with GPEC, and GPEC sends those leads out to cities to respond. The process with that essentially is GPEC says, hey, we've got this employer. They're looking for this type of space. Do you have? And then the cities submit. And then their site selector, the group, then goes through and starts eliminating properties off. So in a case like that, we could have submitted a site like this because for all intents and purposes, aside from zoning and aside from the general plan designation, this site could work. But the moment I submit this site and they see that it has to go through a general plan amendment, and that can't happen until September of potentially this year or next year, they go, no, because I've got 7 other buildings that are over in Tolleson or Marana that I can go into today. They are prepared, they're entitled, and they're ready for us to look. We just need to submit plans and
Okay,
and get to building.
the reason I ask you that question, which getting that answer leads me to, is this something that we need to, as a city, can we take it upon ourselves and say we need to change the designation on some areas? So if you're getting that many requests from GPAC or any other source for light industrial, if that's the coming new thing that people are gonna want, do we need to be proactive and change zoning?
So I'm going to be anecdotal here. My answer in regards to economic development is we need more land that's suited for employment corridor. Large acreage land that would provide for opportunity for jobs creation. But I will be anecdotal. When I did the redevelopment area, Old West Highway redevelopment area, the first concern from residents in that area is, oh, you're going to rezone the land. The city's going to force the land to be rezoned, and they're going to put things in here that we don't want. It's a public policy decision whether the city initiates a rezoning, but in a case like this, we've got an applicant that's willing to go through it on their own, and that's a huge benefit. It is a mutually beneficial opportunity, whereas if we were going in and saying, hey, we think that 40 acres over there that Mr. Heck you own, we want to rezone that to something else. Now we've got other issues that crop up from that. Is it possible? Policy-wise, I'll look to Joel. I think that those things are possible to do rezonings, but it's a public policy decision whether that's something we wanted to get into. At this point in time, I would love to see more land that's zoned for employment corridor, industrial, and business park type of use. But most of the land that's large enough is tied up in the state land holdings.
Okay. Anyone else? Michael? Mike? Steve? Anything?
Okay, so the retail area is going to be, if approved, B5.
No, B1.
B1.
B1 PD.
B1, okay. That's what I was unclear on. Yet there's an awful lot of exclusions as far as businesses that will not be permitted. So I'm just wondering, who exactly are we targeting? I mean, just looking at the table here in 5.3, who are we actually going after? Who do we want to have fill all those pads?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Kreidler, this list, the way this list works is first we asked U-Haul, we said, all right, what exclusions do you propose? And those are basically the items that you see without highlights. And then the items that you see with highlights is the stuff that staff proposed. So for example, in the B5 PD portion of the property, U-Haul suggested we keep out truck stops, medical marijuana, cemeteries, crematories, commercial parking lots and garages, oil and gas extraction, which is probably inappropriate for that site, mining, quarrying, animal slaughtering, petroleum and coal products manufacturing, chemical manufacturing.
But who are we
cracker
going
shops,
after?
Storage yards. In other
Who do we
words,
want?
those are the ones we don't want.
Right, who do we want? That's what I'm asking.
Everything else.
Everything
It's
plus.
So
highlighted.
who is that? What is that?
We,
Because there's an awful lot of exclusion here,
right.
and I mean, we're really limiting ourselves as to what can and cannot come in.
Well, for your public hearing, we will give you the complete commercial zoning matrix, which is pages and pages and pages of potential users.
More so than what's in,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so there.
Part of it,
are-
well, if I could, Rudy, part of it is what Chairman Person Test was getting at, is that we wanted because I think you specifically asked about the B1 PD. So it's currently B1 PD, right, Rudy? Correct. So we're not changing technically that zoning for that lower frontage, so that zoning is really staying the same.
That lower
But we're-
northwest quadrant.
Yeah, that we're just, it's part of this whole thing, but these are types of exclusions we do in other planned development rezonings. And so normally we would say, well, we don't necessarily want a homeless shelter or things like that. So we're looking for things that would pay sales tax. So, or things that might not be compatible with other uses in a shopping center. So a auto body shop might not be good next to a daycare, you know, I'm just throwing that out there. But what we do want are, for that commercial area, are sales tax producing entities. And so, again, manufactured home RV sales, might it be viable there? Sure, but that's not commercial retail. Does that answer your question? It's kind of like backing into it is really what we're trying to do.
It doesn't really answer what I mean, as far as who we're targeting, it just, I mean, we have the exclusions. If we get that matrix before the next, next public hearing, fine, but until then, I don't know who we're going after and what we should be targeting and how we should be going about our recommendations until we have that bit of information. Because I have no idea. I mean, it says retail area on this map, but retail's an awful lot of can include an awful lot of different things.
Right.
And many of those are being excluded. So that's why I'm kind of curious. I mean, I'm getting kind of a mixed message. I want to.
We're not
do what's
excluding any
right for the
retail.
city.
We're not excluding any retail. We're basically saying, these uses are allowed in B1. So you can have a swap meet and a massage parlor, I guess, massage services in a B1. We're saying we don't want that. We're saying we want some sort of big box retail, a movie theater, something that, these are things that don't produce sales tax. Group homes, housing developments, nursing homes, semi-truck service and repair. Any other retail would be fair game. But currently in the B1, these are allowed. So we're saying these are the ones in the B1 that we don't want. Again, we're kind of backing into the,
Well,
by saying what we don't want, we're saying what we do want. So we can get you a refined list.
I will be interested to see what the matrix says and what we target. And it would probably be helpful, I don't know if it's possible or can be done relatively easy, but highlight the types of businesses that are favorable, if that's possible, when that's produced.
And
If
Madam
not, I'll
Chair-
sift through it myself, but.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Kreidler, a short answer might be that for the B1 PD part of the property, we still have high hopes that we might be able to attract some type of shopping center there. We're talking mom and pop shops, we're talking restaurants, we're talking retail, we're talking stores, national chains, things like that. Things that you would see in a typical shopping center without the more uncomplimentary uses that you just see in different parts around town. I mean, there are many properties in town where these uses can go that are straight zone PD. Once upon a time, Brad gave you a presentation of how much property in town is already zone commercial and remains vacant. So those are all areas where these other types of uses can go. If we're trying to create a planned development property here that is conducive to retail, then that's why some of these types of uses are suggested for exclusion. And as far as the industrial part of the property, once again, we have high hopes that we're going to see that part of property develop with a clean industry, job-generating types of uses, and not a bunch of contractor storage yards with no buildings that, starts to look like 17th and 18th Avenues. That's what we're trying to avoid. We want to see buildings. We want to see nice-looking properties. We want to see landscape frontages. We want to see folks working in those areas, not everything just storage or minimal employment.
Rudy,
Yes, ma'am.
if we were to, the 40 acres, not the RV, or not the U-Haul lot up here at the top left, but this other, if we were to rezone it a B5, we wouldn't have any control over who they lease to, though.
Well, there are, even in the B5 zone, some of the more intense, more obnoxious uses still require a conditional use permit.
No, I understand
Yeah.
that, but I'm saying the allowable uses.
Right.
We can say all day long, we want generating businesses.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't be able in any way, shape, or form to dictate to U-Haul who they lease to.
Correct.
In anything that's allowable.
Correct.
So they could
Land
lease
development
it
control.
to, you just said we don't want somebody who wants it just as a storage lot and not a general money, tax money generating business, but we wouldn't have any control over that.
Correct.
So we need to have some way to say what we do and don't want on there.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Chairman Tess, within these uses that we've excluded, we have specifically, there was some designation in there about storage yard and what can be used for storage, because there's going to be business that requires storage for staging or storage for, but we do very specifically call out storage yards for the sake of just storage yards, you know, contractor storage. That is addressed in
Okay.
this. So again, when we've looked at these uses, we've looked at it, and Larry and Rudy can absolutely support or decline to support the statement, but we've looked at it in the sense that not only what do we want as a city, what would we be willing to see? So we approach this from that aspect, but we also approach it from the aspect of what don't we want to see here and what wouldn't be complementary to what's next door. Because you definitely don't, you know, a slaughter yard you don't want next to commercial retail. And the applicant made that very clear. We don't want something that's going to dissuade our ability to potentially market this other as commercial retail because the uses don't work out. You want a viable park all in all. And so we have approached it from what do we want to see, light manufacturing, down to, you know, what some of the things that I've named today, but also in consideration that those are complementary or not going to dissuade from the development of the commercial piece next door.
Yeah, okay.
And excuse me, Madam Chair, and so U-Haul has agreed to this list of exclusions?
We believe so, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, once again, a good question for the applicant, but I think we were pretty much in agreement on these list of exclusions with the exception of RV storage for their property.
Okay, does anyone have any more questions for Rudy or Elon? No one? Okay, then I guess it's time to ask, who am I asking? Huh? Oh,
No
this is
public hearing.
discussion, that's right, this isn't a public hearing. Okay. That's it then. Then we'll, lost my page.
We will bring this item back to you for public hearing on the 28th at the fire station.
Okay. Then we'll move on to the next item. I can't find my page. Presentation and discussion of case GPA-2-18 by Macmillan Manufactured Home Development Company and Lennar Homes, represented by Ralph Pugh, for a land use map amendment to the city's general plan. Rudy? Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a couple of more slides. Madam Chair, this is a plus or minus 38-acre property at the southwest corner of Goldfield and Old West Highway. Goldfield is on the east, Old West Highway is at the northeast corner. Southern, although it's not completely improved, runs along the north portion of the property. On the west side, we have about half of Star Road in there. On the other side of Star Road, of course, is a county island between Star and Cortez. South of Southern and the freeway, that is still a county island. Directly south of the property, some of you may recall many years ago there was a developer who proposed a little gas station, car wash, convenience store right at the northwest corner of Goldfield and the freeway. That development never happened. He rezoned, I think, around 7 acres there. That B1 plan development zoning is still in place there, directly north of the freeway on the west side of Goldfield. And then parcels 22, 27A, and I think 21B are still zoned general rural residential. So years ago, as we mentioned in our staff report, this property was zoned a TH. It was zoned for the old TH zone allowed manufactured home parks, RV parks, and manufactured home subdivisions for a long time. Certainly under our 1999 general plan, The city had high hopes, a vision that this property would be developed as a commercial shopping center, having excellent access off of the freeway and good visibility from the freeway. So we worked with Mr. McMillan back then to do a rezoning of the property. We rezoned it to what was then called C2, a local commercial district. Really, honestly, specifically so that it would not be developed as a mobile home park. And I think there was some kind of development agreement. There was a city-initiated rezoning. Mr. McMillan was agreeable back in those days that the property might be have a higher and better use as a commercial property. Our general plan did designated a retail employment opportunity area. Basically, that is the precursor to what we now call community commercial. However, there were some issues with the property, mostly lack of infrastructure. There's not an adequate water loop in the area. There's no sewer to the area. The property was basically pristine desert, not a whole lot of facilities, not a whole lot of utilities there, although I think from old aerial maps at one point in time, maybe 20, 30 years ago, there was a mobile home or maybe a couple of RV spaces on the lower part of the property. But aside from that, it had never been developed. So working with Mr. McMillan, we rezoned the property to C2 commercial, but the lack of infrastructure has kept this property from developing in the way that the city envisioned. Well, here we are, almost 20 years later. That rezoning was back in June of 2000, so here we are 18 years later, and Mr. McMillan is still waiting for something to come along. A few people along the years have asked, including some commercial developers, but once again, the lack of infrastructure has kept those folks from moving forward, and maybe that's what Elon means when he says this property's not shovel-ready. A developer having to extend sewer service from a quarter mile away or half mile away, or inadequate water to the property, those kinds of things, developers have passed on it. So more recently, once again, the economy improving, we met with some folks from Lennar, we met with the McMillans, and I'm not exactly sure how to describe it, but I guess the city is finally agreeable to perhaps creating a different type of development opportunity for this property, and that's why we have case GPA-1-18 before you here tonight. The property is currently designated a community commercial opportunity area. It's about 38 acres in size. Lennar is a home developer. I don't think they develop commercial property. They might develop multifamily, but what the Lennar wants to do is bring in a new residential neighborhood to our city. They are proposing to redesignate the property for medium-density residential, and very soon, maybe here within the next 2 to 4 weeks, we expect their rezoning proposal to come in. Unlike U-Haul, they are not concurrently processing the rezoning, so the rezoning will kind of fall in behind the general plan amendment. But you do have a conceptual plan. Larry, if we can look at the next slide, please. The next slide just kind of shows us the more general area, the freeway to the south, the county island, low-density county island, general rural to the west. To the north, we've got, there's one small commercial property in there, of course, across Old West Highway. We've got the Mountain View Lutheran Church, we have the Baptist Church, but for the most part, more single-family residential. And on the east side of Goldfield, we've got some ADOT property, we've got state lands, we've got BLM land. So the likelihood of houses and other types of residential development, and perhaps even commercial development, developing east of Goldfield is probably a long ways off. To my knowledge, the state has no plans to auction on any of those properties anytime soon. So, the question arose, well, what about a single-family homes neighborhood? Mr. Pugh is representing Mr. McMillan and the Lennar folks, and their plan is for a single-family home subdivision. I believe these are proposed to be single-story homes. The lot size ranges the home sizes range from, I think, 1,300 to 2,200 square feet. I believe it's all single-story. extensive landscaping, little
There is
park.
It said
some two-story,
Yeah, it said,
Okay.
it
all
mentioned
right. I
two-story.
spoke to Mr. Pugh the other day, and
maybe that's changed.
I might be wrong, But anyway, your typical single-family residential neighborhood, some internal greenery and retention areas, about 178 lots, lot sizes in the neighborhood of 4,700 square feet. Similar to some other developments we've seen lately, a couple of Mr. Kaufman's developments come to mind, Belagave, Stagecoach, the more recent things we've seen. Lennar proposes to construct new, very modern homes. They offer the integrated computer amenity. I think it's called Aleska. I think I called it Seska, but I think it's actually called Aleska. You know, hey, Aleska, what's a good movie tonight? You know, one of those things that you can talk to and that listens to you. Anyway, so the proposal, once again for discussion only, is a redesignation of the property, rezoning to come later, and be happy to answer any of your questions at this time. Once again, we internally as staff will get together and figure out the types of improvements we're going to request of the applicants. Certainly improvements along Goldfield Road. I believe the internal streets are going to be public, not private, so that's a little different than what we normally see. But another residential opportunity for the city, Madam Chair, non-age restricted, so family development, hopefully homes that are affordable for families as well as empty nesters and everybody in between.
One thing I read in the report, I think, said, and I don't want to paraphrase whoever wrote it, that you don't foresee anytime soon that commercial businesses be that far down Old West Highway. It might be a good reason to make this residential, because it doesn't look like commercial's going to be from town clear that far east.
Correct, Madam Chair, but as I mentioned a little bit earlier, Larry, if you can scroll up just a little bit, no, I'm sorry, the other way. You'll see that, once again, the properties directly south of Mr. McMillan's property are zoned B1 PD. So there's still some commercial opportunity right off of the freeway and hopefully some neighborhood services. If this project goes in, that might spur development of those neighborhood-friendly types of businesses on those properties to the south as well.
Because right across Goldfield in that triangular, it's not on this map, but that other one you had,
Previous.
that triangular piece of land right there to the right of that.
The east?
Yeah, to the east. That's where the state dumps all their dirt.
Yes.
And they're probably not going to get rid of that or do anything with it anytime soon.
Correct.
So there's no chance of putting in probably business or residential or anything over there across on the other side of the street.
It's going to be a long time.
A long time, because that's a dump storage, dirt dump
Absolutely.
for the state.
Yes, ma'am.
So, I mean, I suppose putting something in there is better than having vacant land sit there forever. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Questions?
Madam
Yes.
Chair? Rudy, there was some conversation about the entry and egress from the development that I think the city wanted Old West Highway and Lennar wanted Goldfield. Can you articulate and kind of help us understand that a little?
Well,
better?
the site plan I shared with you tonight is actually a little bit different than the site plan you have in your packets. And I believe the one difference is that the site plan that's in your packets has the main entryway off of Goldfield a little farther north, basically lining up with that little entryway into the city that we have now. We did discuss with Lennar the possibility of punching an access onto the property at the northeast corner directly onto Old West Highway. The idea being, you know, we don't want folks driving out of this neighborhood turning right and heading straight out of the city. You know, so they have moved it up in their other conceptual plan. And, of course, we've also talked about possibly opening up Southern and maybe creating more than one access way in and out of the property to encourage folks to turn left and go into downtown AJ. And of course, with the emerging development of downtown AJ, hopefully that'll be more and more attractive to residents here on the east edge of our city. So those types of details will be focused more so when we work on the subdivision plat with them. This plan here is strictly conceptual.
Because if I'm looking at this where their entry is located, I believe, isn't there a median there? So there
Well,
would be a left?
that's the other issue, right? There's
Okay.
a median on part of this
Yeah.
property that.
Yeah, so they would have.
So you want to,
okay, all
right.
It's got issues
Because we
right
don't want
now.
we don't want it to be a right turn only
Right.
out of that, right? Okay.
Gentlemen, down here, any questions?
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
Rudy, are these bordering streets, half-streets?
Star, I think, is a half-street. Southern is probably a half-street dirt road. And then there's also another little dirt road on the south. So undedicated half-streets, I believe they are reserved in easements, but they are minimally improved. As a matter of fact, some of those buildings on the west side of Star are actually encroaching into the right-of-way. So with the construction of a new street there on the west side, it should improve circulation and certainly public improvements in the area.
So the construction of new streets is full streets or half-streets?
The applicants would be responsible for their half-street improvements.
Half Street, okay. Stephen? Uh-huh.
I have no.
Robert? Gentlemen, nothing? Wow, get off easy.
Bingo.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, let me find my page now, if I can. Information and reports? Nothing? Director's report?
Earlier, I think Michael missed it, but we did introduce Sydney Urias, our new planner for the city, so we're very pleased to have him here, and you'll be seeing him in the future, probably on a medical marijuana CUP or something.
We'll put you on the hot seat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Okay, then we're down to selection of meeting dates, times, location, and purpose.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission hold a regular meeting on August 28th, 2018, at 7 p.m. in the Superstition Fire and Medical District's Administration Office located at 565 North Idaho Road.
we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please, Rudy?
Commissioner McGraw.
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler.
Yes.
Commissioner Frank.
Yes.
Chairwoman Nesser.
Yes.
Commissioner Howard.
Yes.
Commissioner Schroeder.
Yes.
Vice Chair Heck.
Yes.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Okay, and if I hear no objection, I will adjourn this meeting at 8:15. Thank you, everyone.